Hey guys, welcome. I'm going to be talking with Judy today. You all know her pretty well, but Judy, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you?
Yes, thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. My name is Judy Cho. I am board certified in holistic nutrition. I was a management consultant pretty much my whole adult life career. And then I got really sick. I was eating a plant based diet for over a decade. And I was suffering from an eating disorder. It happened right around the same time. So I do think my plant based diet contributed to that. And then I started using behaviors, eating disordered nature, and I think that really propelled me into depression, and so that was like my secret life behind closed doors. Everyone thought I was super healthy, but I really was struggling with a lot of that. So I understand a lot of that, like binge eating and struggling with food, and then having that shame cycle of why can't I just be stronger and not eat these foods or be healthier? But I think there's a lot more to that. And fast forward time, my brother decided to do a ketogenic diet. I thought he was crazy, adding butter to coffees. And so I tried to do the research and show that he was wrong, and only to find out that I was the one that was wrong. Um, I forgot to mention that I things came to a head when I had my first child, 6 months. I was nursing him. I got mastitis, so I had an infection in my breast. So I had to get on antibiotics, and that with poor sleep, using eating disorder behaviors, and nursing and high stress of being a new mama, got me really sick. No one really knows what happened, but I had a mental breakdown. So my parents didn't know what to do with me. We have a psychiatrist in the family. And so the psychiatrist said she needs to go into the mental hospital. They put me in there. I got on antidepressants and then antipsychotics. And something I said or did, they deemed me that I wasn't safe for my own health. And so I was put on a 72-hour mandatory hold, meaning that I had all my rights taken away from me. I don't remember a lot of the story, but I do know that my girlfriends would come. I always get teary eyed with this part, but my girlfriends would come to the hospital, and I would say, "Where's my older son? Where's Caleb?" And they would have to tell me over and over again, "You stop nursing, you're on medications, and you're sick." And then I would cry, and then we would, repeat that. And once I got out of it, they never understood what happened other than attributing it. I think you have postpartum, and I think that you are struggling with an eating disorder, so you need to go to intensive care. So we made the hard decision of leaving my son back with my parents who live in Los Angeles, and I live in Austin, Texas. And I went into a full-time facility, and I tried to be the best student to get better because that was the way that I would get my son back. And so I learned all the mindful eating, the intuitive eating, but I was still plant-based. And I got into all of these psychiatric meds. And I got better, got out, but I would still fall into these behaviors. And so that's when the ketogenic diet occurred to me, and I tried to do it plant-based keto. So listening to my brother, I tried it, but I still was like, I don't need meat, meat. I want to save the animals, etc. And I think it was in this one dark cycle where a friend had mentioned a carnivore diet online, and I thought that was the craziest thing I had heard in my life. And again, I wasn't eating any meat for over a decade, and I think it was literally next to the toilet. And I'm like, I can't live this life this way anymore. That maybe I'll just try it. And so I did. And I think within 2 weeks, the physical desire where I would have to go and binge, or that desire where like I can't control myself, that part went away. The desire to turn to food, like I'm stressed, I just want to eat something, like that emotional side didn't go away, but the physical, the hormone side went away. And then I realized there's something to this. And so I was on disability because of the whole mental illness stuff. And in that time, I just started researching everything and consuming every keto book and trying to understand what happened to me, because no one understands. I got on these antidepressants, it didn't work enough. Then I got on antipsychotics, that didn't work enough. And I was always told I was broken and that you were just born a little mentally unstable. So you just need to be on meds. And then I get on meat, do some Jesus stuff there too, and therapy. And then it's like, I don't struggle with depression. And so that anger, that fire that I was misled to think that I was the one that was broken, was the fire that then I wanted to share online. And so while I was on disability, consulting by trade. So I do infographics. I was bored. I was like, well, I'm healing. What do I do with myself now? And so I decided to make graphics, and I did it under a pseudonym because I was still on disability. And it was just truly to share. And then it kind of took off. And so then I just came to this ahead of like, should I change my career? And so now I share because those probably 15 years of my life were the darkest, where there were many times where I just thought, even with a new son, I thought, man, like if I could just sleep forever, that would be nice. And so
Mhm.
you guys kind of understand what that means. And I never think that. And I have two beautiful boys. I cherish my life and I serve, and it just gives me so much passion. And I want people to heal. And so that's why I advocate and why I'm here.
Wow, that is such an amazing story. I truly understand what you mean. I don't know how much you know about my first pregnancy, but it was very traumatic, and I didn't have an eating disorder. I had other things that sent me into that spiral. And
Okay.
I think if I hadn't already been eating a meat-based diet, that I would have went down even further. So thank you for sharing that. That is such an amazing story. When did you decide to write your book?
So I think it was 2 years into being carnivore.
Mhm.
I noticed that on social media. I'm sure I know you know, but you get asked, the same questions, and I'm like,
Mhm.
if I just write a book, I'll never have to talk about vitamin C or fiber again, and that will solve everything. And of course, that doesn't happen. But
No.
so I think it was the passion in me. So my kids, like I would put my kids down, and in the middle of the night, I would write the book,
Mhm.
and I just got it done. So it was 2 years into carnivore. I had just finished Nutritional Therapy Association. I wasn't
Mhm.
board certified just yet then. And I just opened a practice doing one-on-ones with carnivores. And so I've learned so much since then. So I definitely need to update the book, but that's how I did it. I did it 2 years after being carnivore.
That's the Carnivore Cure, that was your
Yes.
first book, right? And then now you have the Elimination Diet Carnivore. What's
Yes.
the name
So
of that one? I have it somewhere.
yeah, it's the beginner's guide to carnivore. And the main reason I did that, and I worked with a publisher on that one, is because people said the carnivore cure, it's a lot of detail. And like, how do I just do the elimination diet? And so the carnivore cure has an elimination diet where just, it's like the typical start with just beef, salt, and water, and then you add in other things. And we recommend the order of how we add in things based on the research that's out there. So we looked at all different elimination diets. We looked at what are the sensitivities in fish versus chicken versus pork. And so
Mhm.
that's how we construed our elimination diet. And it's really personalized. So if like level 3 doesn't work enough for you, then you can always move up or you can move down and such. And so the second book is it's a almost summary view with a little bit more nuance that I've learned. And it's really truly for the beginner. So it's here's why you should try carnivore, and especially related to diseases. And
Mhm.
here's the things you can gain, and here's how to really do that elimination diet.
And do you find that most people should use carnivore as an elimination diet first and then branch out and reintroduce things? Or do you think people should go slowly and then get to the elimination diet process? Like how do you think people, because a lot of people really want to jump into
Yeah.
carnivore. Do you think that's okay for people to jump right in, or is a slow transition through the levels a better process?
Yeah, I think it's really personalized. So the book shares to start with, like, go super strict, like get all your blood work, check your measurements, or do all the non-scale victory lists and stuff. But after working with, we probably have worked with over 2,000 carnivore clients and patients, or in the keto space, paleo.
Mhm.
And what we've learned is it doesn't matter how ideal of a diet or how ideal of a protocol or regimen you'll start. What really matters is understanding your needs, your abilities or capabilities, or your time to put in this protocol, and then start
Mhm.
with that. So
Yeah.
for me, for example, I went super strict beef only, and I only could do it for a short period, and I didn't have a lot of food intolerances. So I first thought the best way to do carnivore, because that's what, the internet shares, is to just go beef, salt, and then you're like the strictest. And I
Yeah.
did that for a while, but then I felt like I was having a hard time. So then I opened it up, and
Mhm.
then I ate everything, and I was really, really strict carnivore for 3 years. And now I occasionally eat other things than carnivore. But it really depends. So if you are really sick, starting with the strictest may help, because then you can sort of eliminate really quickly what is going on. And then if you get to a baseline of health where you feel really good, okay, maybe now I'll add chicken back. But
Mhm.
a lot of people to do that transition is really, really hard. So we then will recommend, well, why don't you eat anything animal based? So anything land, sea, and air, and then see like if you're still not well, then like why don't we start reducing? And so it really, I think, depends on the person. And so I think if anyone listening right now is figuring out how should I start, just go on like what do you think you could really handle? And I think by that, that would be the best way to start.
Yeah, that's what I always say too. What can you sustain? What is
Yes.
reasonable
Right.
for you in this moment? Because, we're all going through stuff and it's a weird time to be alive right now anyway. So, what
Totally.
can you handle? If someone was to choose to do keto as an elimination diet, because that is kind of a gateway because you're eliminating grains and gluten and, processed foods and usually seed oils if you're being very strict. Well, very strict, comparatively speaking. What vegetables or keto approved foods would you say people should eliminate, even if
Mhm.
they're trying to include some vegetables like almonds, or what's on your list of like, you should probably, even if it's keto, you should probably try to
Okay.
eliminate it?
I think from a gut healing perspective, so the gut is so important because it has 70 to 80% of your immune system. And so if your gut is in disarray, you will have a higher chance of struggling with leaky gut and then autoimmune illness. So the goal is to heal the gut as much as possible. The
Okay.
reason why keto and carnivore, besides all the other metabolic healing, so like the lower glucose and all of those things, it's supposed to reduce the inflammation in the body, and that reduction, it supports the gut healing. You also have less like invaders that are affecting the gut. And as you can heal, then you can probably have less illness. And so, with that said, and then putting that lens on as your perspective, a lot of the grains and nuts and seeds are probably the worst. And obviously, like a lot of the processed foods that have, even if they're like keto-fied, a lot of those are probably not ideal. I think what we see in our practice is that gluten is one of the worst culprits. It doesn't matter if it's like keto-fied gluten.
Mhm.
Gluten is so hard on the gut. Most people cannot digest the proteins that are of gluten. And of course, there's people that are super sick, so they get celiacs, but generally, most people don't feel well on gluten. And then the other thing is nuts. I know keto is like I ate a lot of nuts on a
Me
keto
too.
diet as well. But find your tolerance, right? So if you say no nuts and then that will make you binge on nut butter, that's that balance again. So maybe the max is try to have only a tablespoon in a day or so. But it's also nuts have a lot of the pesticides. A lot of them are GMO. Most of them are pasteurized. So you're not eating a real nut, and even a real nut has its hazards. But it again will impact your gut, which will then impact your abilities to heal. So I would say nuts, grains, and seeds.
Okay. What about dairy? How,
Yes.
how what do you how do you think, or how do you use that in your practice? Like, what do you recommend for your clients when they're wanting to keep dairy in there? Are you telling them to just limit it, measure it, specific types of dairy, if they can include some but eliminate others? What's your protocol for that?
Yeah, so dairy is tricky. So it depends. It again will depend. So I'll like bring up a few people. So autoimmune, unfortunately, I have seen the antibodies go down. Sorry, guys, with dairy. So we have seen few people in our practice where if they remove dairy altogether, their TPO antibodies will go down. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, but they have not picked like the highest quality raw cultured dairy. So maybe that was a factor. Um, and then if you're trying to lose weight, so there was one client of ours that was like, okay, I'll add more fat. And I didn't know, but she was drinking a whole quart of not half and half, but heavy cream.
Oh,
And she's like,
wow.
I am gaining weight. And I said, what are you consuming? And we did a food and mood journal. And she was, so she was consuming like 800 calories in the morning of heavy cream. And she's like, but it's, keto or carnivore.
Yeah.
And so it can also stall weight loss. But again, it's like, it's that longevity of how long can you do this diet? Like I
Mhm.
could not go zero dairy because I know then I probably wouldn't eat more animal based or meat based. So it's like, where are you in your health journey? If you have autoimmune, you may have to reduce it. You can first try, like maybe I'll take out some of the processed dairies, try to go with raw milks, raw cheeses, cultured dairies, like go with that first. If your antibodies still don't go down, I also think using a little bit of iodine is important. But and then if it doesn't go down with just the cleanest dairies, then I would try to cut it out and see if that will also help with weight loss. Again, it'll depend. Like if you leave, maybe I'll just do a few slices of cheese a day, and if that doesn't move the needle, you could try to remove it and then see how you feel.
What about spices and seasonings and sauces? I know the answer to all of these questions,
I
but
know,
for the
I know, I
sake of
know.
argument, like, what's our markers for that? Like, what are the best to cut out or keep? And sauces like homemade versus bought, and what ingredients should you be looking at, and that sort of thing.
Okay. So in terms of spices and herbals, I would or like herbal seasonings, I would look at the plant and then see if it's one of the plants that have the most anti-nutrients. So obviously we know about oxalates now. There's also phytic acid. There's I'm uh, blinking lectins, and so there's all these anti-nutrients. So again, if you don't eat like any, like you don't want to add like seeds to the top of your like if you're eating keto, if you're eating like a high fat salad or something. But
Mhm.
um I think it will. So for example, black pepper is known to have high oxalic acid or oxalate, so you may want to convert to using white pepper. White pepper is a lot more safer. I would start with just salt and then again do this elimination diet. I think our bodies have the strongest biofeedback, meaning that it will tell you if it doesn't like something. So
Right.
let's say you are feeling really good. Now you're eating carnivore, you're losing a little bit of weight, you're sleeping through the night, you have all these symptoms like your skin's getting better, your hair is getting better. And then you're like, I want to add more seasonings because salt alone is boring. And so then I think a lot of the greens, meaning like I don't use a lot of herbals, so I'm like kind of pausing, or seasonings. So because we always say find the ones that work for you, but try not
Mhm.
to use the ones that are high in oxalates. So you may want to just start with single seasoning and then just use that and see, like, do you have more bloat after your meal? Like, do you feel more fatigue? And it's the same meat that you're normally eating. And if you have an adverse effect, that seasoning's probably not as ideal for you. I don't think that we have to be so rigid if we don't need to be. And so
Right.
that's where I think the food and mood journal is so ideal, just because you see a list of like, do not eat these, um, unless they have a reasoning for it, like this herbal maybe, I don't know, causes some type of like the oxalates will maybe bind to minerals or cause more pain, then maybe you want to reduce that because, hey, I have joint pain. And so I want to reduce all the oxalic acid foods. So that's how I would do that. In terms of seasonings, I mean, in terms of like the sauces, no one's really asked us that in our practice. It's so interesting. But yeah, obviously making homemade, using like natural egg yolks or like the ones that you make at home, everything on grocery shelves are more processed. So again, it's that balance of, there are some people there, we definitely work with people that a certain herbal, even in supplements, like an herbal or an antiviral, they take that one herb and it sets them off for an autoimmune flare or like a histamine flare. So you have to figure out ultimately what is sensitive for you. We have not seen across the board like everyone is sensitive to black pepper. We unfortunately don't see that.
Right, because we're all a little like the dose makes the
Yes.
poison is my favorite because someone can eat a little bit of something, be unaffected, and someone else can eat a little and have a total humongous flare up. And just knowing things are personalized, and you have to put in the work, and hire someone like Judy or a health coach to help you along the way. Talk a little bit more about the food and mood journal. What do you ask your clients to really pay attention to when they're doing those?
Yeah, it's my favorite tool because I think it really puts you as the person that's trying to change your life in the front seat. So if I ask anybody, what did you eat 3 lunches ago, assuming you're not eating the same thing every day, most people don't know. They don't even know what maybe they ate 2 lunches ago. So how are you going to know that your symptoms are getting better or things are improving other than the overarching, maybe I have joint pain or I can't sleep through the night? Those obviously will take a little bit longer, but if you use a food and mood journal, so what I recommend for anybody starting a carnivore diet or any new diet or any new change in your diet is to list out what are all of the symptoms I'm suffering from today and then grade them from a 1 to 10. 1 being like very little, 10 is I feel like horrible, this is the worst. And then listing out every symptom, big or small, doesn't matter, but everything. And then what are things that you wish would get better? And I guess they could be very similar. And then from there, in our food and mood journal, and we have one that's free. So I'll send you the link so you can share it.
Okay, great.
But
Yeah.
it really tracks everything. So obviously your food, how much water you're drinking, or how much other drinks that you're drinking, supplements, and then your mood afterward. Like, did you have a bowel movement? How was your gut feeling? What's your mood like? So did it make you feel fatigued? Did it make you all of a sudden feel more anxiety? And then the more you document, which is, I know it's painstaking, I know it's annoying, but once you do that, and then like what time did you wake up? What time did you go to bed? And then like, how did you feel right when you wake up? The more you document, then you can realize after a week of doing that or two, you will see little clues like, oh, I think I'm sensitive to that herbal I use, or that the tea I'm drinking, or I notice that every time I eat chicken, I feel more bloat. And so that is, I think, the power of the food and mood journal. And it is up to you what you track. But ideally, if you could track anything that you're ingesting, and then your mood and your any gut related stuff, those would be the key things I think you should track.
Yes, documentation. I talk about that all the time. I have a food and mood journal too that see, guys, I'm not crazy. Judy's saying exactly what I say. Like, I feel so
Yes.
validated right now. How long do you think someone should do an elimination diet or carnivore or whatever they're choosing? How long before they reintroduce things?
I would say if you have a baseline of health, for me, my baseline of health was, if I do carnivore, ideally I don't have bouts of depression. So once I got there where I really like, obviously I have days I have low mood, or I'm like just crabby, or I'm being like the mean mom, right? But I have, if I don't suffer from depression where I can't get out of bed, even though I want to get out of bed, then that's a win. And then whatever I'm eating so far is working. So now if I'm like, well, I want to eat more than whatever 10 foods I'm eating, then it's like, okay, what will I introduce first? And whatever you decide to introduce, let's say my thing is keto bread. Let's just say that. Which without gluten, guys. Okay, so keto bread, and I introduce that, and I need to eat a very little amount for the next 3 to 5 days. And I know this is a boring process, but trust me, this will help you figure out what
Worth
you're
it.
sensitive to. Yes, it's worth it. So I would start with maybe a quarter of the bread at lunch, and then I would jog what I feel. So now I have a baseline. Do I feel any mood related imbalances? Am I feeling anxious? Do I feel depressed? If I don't feel anything, great. Like, I just write that down. And then for dinner, either I could start with just that quarter again, or I can move to a half. And then you slowly do that for the next 3 days. If everything is the same, that food is probably safe. And then you can add in the second one. Second food. If that food makes you feel imbalanced, you have to start from scratch again, like the foods that you eat that you know are safe for you, and then start over. And then once you get to the baseline of no symptoms, then you add in your second food.
Right. Amazing. Okay. What about fasting? Should people start fasting when they're doing this too, or is that a step too far, or is that something that is again personalized?
Yeah, it totally is personalized. So I do see that people are recommended in their 60s, like right when they're starting carnivore, to like feast and fast, or like, I don't think that is ideal for your thyroid and hormone function. And I could stand and debate that, because we work with some of the most chronically ill. What I do recommend, but I get it, like people have blood sugar imbalances, high blood pressure, insulin resistance. So the ideal would be that you start with 3 square meals, right? And I know it's like, what? But I want to lose weight fast, and I want to reduce my blood sugar. But I would say if you are trying to eat carnivore, just 3 square carnivore meals, and then don't snack in between. Try not to eat snacks. Like, don't eat too many pork rinds. Just stick with the meat and eggs and bacon and all that good stuff. And then once you get the hang of that, then you can move to 2. And then sometimes if you want to just go to OMAD or 1, then fine. But it is really hard for people, especially if you have gut imbalances, to stick with just 1 meal and then get enough of the nutrition and get your gut to assimilate all the nutrients in your body. A lot of people can do it, but if you, again, start seeing symptoms like you're starting to lose your hair, you're probably not eating enough, or your body is not assimilating the nutrients enough. And so we generally recommend at least 2 meals a day, but we do have clients that eat 1 because, we have to support where you are. But in terms of fasting, if you are healthy enough, right? So if you're not suffering from autoimmune and you're not because a lot of times autoimmune is your gut is leaky and you're not getting enough nutrition into your body to support the immune system. So if your body is nourished enough, then you could like I'm totally supportive of the 16 hours of fasting, but I don't think you should go long. You should go over 24 hours right away. It's too many changes. And then even psychologically, trying to do so many, like I'm going to start exercising, I'm going to start fasting. Now I'm going to eat only meat, no carbs.
Mhm.
That is a recipe for disaster. And then imagine the shame spiral you go through. See, I knew I couldn't do it. I'm not strong enough. I'm not good enough. I'll never get better. You don't want to do that. So you should start very slow and
Yes.
slowly bring in.
You don't have to debate me. I'm on team eat,
Okay, okay.
especially
Good,
in the
good.
beginning, because I'm convinced that most of our health problems are because we're malnourished. And so
Yes,
the last thing you want to do is continue to malnourish your body. You want to feed it and re-nourish your body and give all these key ingredients that you've probably been missing out on for decades if you've been sick for a long time. So yeah,
agreed.
I'm on your team. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put QQQ before them, and then we can see them really easily. So elimination diets are really good for autoimmune, obviously, but you came from a mental health aspect. Why do people with mental health problems or history with mental health problems need to do an elimination diet? What's the science behind that?
So your gut stores most of the immune system, and the body is connected through the entire nervous system. So I'll try to break it down really quickly. We have the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spine, and then you have your peripheral system that has all that fight or flight, the digest, rest and digest. It has all the other sides that are internal to your body that sort of works together. So your brain and the rest of your body are super connected. Inside, so if I'm eating something bad and my immune system starts flaring saying, hey, there's a toxin that's in the gut, we need to fix it, everything will go to the gut and trying to fight that. But if I keep eating bad every single day, the immune system's highly activated in the gut, and eventually it's a losing battle. That's why we get autoimmune, we get leaky gut, we have gut issues, bloat, and all of the non-normal stools. And the problem is that 80% or maybe it's 70% of our neurotransmitters, the feel good hormones, all or the feel good endorphins, it's produced in the gut. So you have more serotonin in your gut, and those serotonins communicate with the serotonins in your brain and the dopamine. And so there is a basically gut brain axis. So when the gut is affected, it affects the brain. When the brain gets affected, it affects the gut. And so they say leaky gut, leaky brain. So when your gut is not feeling right, and I always had gut issues. So I was on laxatives probably for 10 years straight. And
Wow.
I had to do a lot of healing with that, right?
Mhm.
And it also killed a lot of my nutrients.
Yeah.
Um, and so as I healed my gut, the miraculous thing was I was healing my brain as well. And then I was getting more fuel into my system because I'm eating more nutrient dense meats because I wasn't eating any meats. And then as you heal your gut, you will heal a lot of the lack of energy that's going to your brain. It's the endorphins, the serotonin, the dopamine, all of those gets more support. And so overall, you will find that people's moods get better. And one thing I want to bring up is, so if you think about all of our sex hormones, we went through this whole period of super low fat, and we need higher fat to support all of our sex hormones because they're derived from cortisol or cholesterol. And if you think about a lot of the children that are suffering from mental illness, I really think that their diet is a big factor in that impact because we are eating more processed foods. It's not the good fats that we want from animal fats. It's a lot of the seed oils, and they're not nourishing the brain. They're getting more leaky gut, and as they get more leaky gut, it's going to affect their brain. It's why I feed my kids low carb and super high fat because I want them to be rich in testosterone.
That's amazing. Betsy Rose says, how frequently are you seeing, hold on, I put it on the screen so you can see it.
Oh, nice.
How frequently are you seeing CIRS and heavy metals?
Yeah. So I think my practice is, so let me explain what CIRS is really quickly for people.
Yeah.
So it's basically chronic inflammation that is turned on. And then for certain people, that turning on never turns off. And so there's usually triggers and signs and cues that we see now. So COVID could be one. So if you had long COVID and you're not getting better, it could be that you might be suffering from CIRS, even if your diet and lifestyle aren't better.
Mhm.
It could be that you lived in a moldy building. It could be that you had chronic Lyme. It's just the question always is, how come everyone else got it, but I'm the only one that's still sick? That's
Mhm.
where I think CIRS can be the indicator. And then in terms of the amount, because I work with the most chronically ill, so in carnivore, if you are healed with the elimination diet, which so many people are, then you never have to come see us. But when it's that carnivore is not working enough, that's when people, or any diet, that's when they come see us. And so I would say like 70 to 80% now of our practice, what we will work on healing the gut because that's still really needed. And then we'll see that some people still are suffering from CIRS. And then in terms, sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, and then in terms of heavy metals, so I am not of the mindset that you should treat heavy metals first, and I'll give you my logic. So we used to do a lot of hair mineral testing, and we still do that. That helps you to understand your intracell, so inside your cells mineral balance. It's not what you do when you get blood work. So it gives you 3 months of data of
Mhm.
what your mineral status is, and when we do that, there is a part of it that shows your heavy metal load. And so we see people with higher mercury, we see, and I think the body is really smart where if you think about heavy metals, they are oftentimes the same size and molecule and same size and weight as minerals that we need. And what minerals do in our body is they're spark plugs. So they allow things to happen in the body. When you are deficient or there's not enough of a certain mineral, including trace minerals, the heavy metals will maybe be used in place until you have a heavy, better mineral. And so I think sometimes when we go directly for mercury, we are risking things that we don't know why the body's holding on to that mercury and we're messing with something. And the problem is that if you mess with mercury that's let's say lodged in my arm, in my the fat in my arm, it can get mislodged. And if I can't detox properly, I can't poop it out properly, it can actually go to your brain. And so that alone to me made me scared of like, I don't want to treat this first. So what we have seen is when we mineral balance better, when people are more healed, right? You're going through a gut healing protocol, you do an autoimmune elimination diet, you eat higher fat. When we do the mineral test again, I promise you, we see the heavy metals naturally go down on its own. But of course, you have to fix your diet and lifestyle. And then beyond that, if you worked on diet, sleep, hormones, thyroid, autoimmune, and then you've even considered CIRS, then if we see that there are still more heavy metals, then I'm willing to touch it. So that's why we don't focus highly on heavy metals, just because
Mhm.
your body uses heavy metals, whether it's like hidden in parasites, whether it's hidden in mold. But I just don't think it's the very first thing you should touch.
What about supplements? Do you tell anyone if they're on carnivore, what are supplements that you say you should still take these, even though carnivore obviously is highly nutritional and you're getting a lot of vitamins and minerals from your food? What on top of that do you recommend, if anything?
Yeah, so we do recommend supplements. So the very first time a carnivore worked with us, they're like, "This is blasphemy," because there are some plants, and so it was a hard sell back then. But
Yeah.
I think the biggest, so we don't give a lot of nutritional supplements. We will do gut healing supplements. So it's a lot of the digestive enzymes. So if your gut has been in disarray, if you've suffered from autoimmune for so long, and we only know this because we do functional tests. We'll do blood work and we see that this person, like, they swear they're eating 2 pounds of meat or a little bit less than that, but they're still malnourished.
Mhm.
It's often because the gut is not assimilating it properly. So if you've ever had SIBO or SIFO, your small intestine may not be absorbing the nutrients enough. And so we give supports, so stomach acid or digestive bitters to help break down the food in your gut. And then we may give support for like probiotics just
Mhm.
temporarily to support the gut and to fight off some of the bad microbes that are overgrown, such as candida. And as they heal, then the goal is to get off all supplements. We may give like an adrenal support, which has a little extra of certain nutrients just temporarily as a band-aid as they're healing, because I might say it might take you 6 months to get better, but no one wants to hear for 6 months, I'm not going to feel better though, right? Temporarily.
Right.
So that's where we use band-aids. But generally speaking, I do believe meat has all the nutrients you need, but sometimes we need to support the gut and just expedite the process a little bit. And so that's why we do that.
Right, because 'cause you're in a healing phase.
Yes,
If you were healed, then you wouldn't need that stuff, but you're not
exactly.
healed, you're very
Yeah.
sick. Most people coming to carnivore have either been very sick or are very sick for a very long time, so that's
Yeah.
awesome, I love hearing that. What about iodine? Do you recommend iodine?
I do. So I've interviewed the founder of Hakala Labs, and he has, I think he's done like over 50,000 tests. So they make you do a 24-hour urine test. And so
Mhm.
you take 50, I think it's milligrams, it might be micrograms of iodine, and then you just pee it out through the day. And they want to see how much are you excreting. And all the research he's done with Dr. Abrams as well as Dr. Brownstein is that your body doesn't hold on to excess iodine. It actually pees it out.
Mhm.
So the all of the information where people are like, oh, too much iodine will cause hyperthyroid, we don't see that in our practice. Almost everybody that we work with, we at least recommend a little bit of iodine. The dosage will depend on the person. And I can tell you, of all the urine tests we've done, we've only had one person close to normal range. So everyone else, even though they were taking iodine, were below levels. Now,
Mhm.
I know some people do blood work, but blood work is just a snapshot. It doesn't tell you what you're actually absorbing.
Right.
Most of your cells need iodine, your breast tissue, like women really need iodine. We've seen some people with Hashimoto's, the levels of their antibodies go down just by adding iodine alone.
Mine
It's
did.
crazy.
Mine
Okay,
went down
okay.
just with the iodine,
It's crazy.
and I did the urine analysis with
Okay,
that. I took the 50 milligrams and did the 24 urine, and
okay,
mine were normal, but I have been doing this a while, you know what I
okay.
mean? I'm sure if I had tested 5 years ago, they would not have been normal, but I've been using iodine since the beginning from 7 years ago. I've always used iodine, and even when people were, like, yelling at me, "You have Hashimoto's, you can't use iodine, blah," it's always made me feel even better, and I actually took it away for, like, a week just to see,
Sure.
and I got, my heel pain came back in the heels of my feet. I started getting more pain again, and I was like, "No, I'm putting it back in." So I'm pro iodine. I take about 4 or 5 drops a
Okay.
day
Of the
currently.
2% or 5%?
The 2% right
Okay,
now.
okay.
But
Yeah,
like I said, I've been eating this way for a long time, so,
yeah, yeah. So I will tell you guys, I have we have we recommend almost everybody that does some type of testing or symptom burden with us, and we will list iodine, especially if they're having thyroid imbalances. I will tell you that we have never had a person that we're like, uh-oh, we got to remove iodine. Like never. And
Yeah.
we do labs. And yes, your TSH can falsely go up for a little bit because all of a sudden you're flooding your body with the nutrient it needs.
Mhm.
But I just think that we understand that a lot of our dietary guidelines is wrong. And I really think a lot of the studies they did on iodine was not the iodine that we are using. They did it on radioactive iodine. They flooded these rodents, and then the liver or the thyroid got messed up. But they never did testing afterwards. So like did the thyroid get normal after? Like they never did any follow-ups. And so then standard care just latched onto that of
Yeah.
you have enough iodine and iodized salt, even though most of it gets evaporated. And just because we don't see goiters doesn't mean that we have sufficient. They just, it's like you're right under being ill, but they're
Mhm.
masking that. So I just think that if we know that it doesn't stay in our body, just use a food and weird journal. Start with half a drop and see how you feel, and take it in the morning because we've had clients that take it in the evening and they get so alert from it because they
Really?
needed it so much that
Wow.
they can't go to bed. So I would start with a half a drop very early on in the morning. I would take a little bit of salt because iodine also competes with fluoride and bromide, which are not ideal in your
Yes.
body. And so when you are taking iodine, it will dispel that and it will try to detox it. The salt, because it's chloride, same part of the table of elements, that salt will help flush out some of the bromide and fluoride as well. And bromide is in everything. Any fire retardant, clothes, rugs, furniture, it is
Mhm.
in that. So every time you're sitting down, you're breathing it in. So that's where also we need more iodine. And if you're not taking iodine, that is stealing from your iodine levels too.
Exactly. Lois has a question. Is there a certain amount a person should eat a day according to height, weight, or ideal weight? Or should we do, as Dr. Berry says, just eat until you're comfortably stuffed, even if it seems like a lot of food? So, what's your take on this?
So I think when you are so initially as you transition, you could start with the eat until comfortably stuffed,
Mhm.
and then as you're healed. So like I use Dr. Berry's method in that sense. So I now will eat more fat or less fat depending on my needs. If today I feel a little bit like I need more fat, I'll add it. But when you're healing, I do think you should eat sufficiently to ensure that you're getting enough nutrients. And the general recommendation we do is about zero point 0.8 grams of protein per 1 pound of ideal body weight. So just to give you guys what that means, if you were 5 feet and you weighed 100 pounds, that would be at least 80 grams of protein in a full day. And 80 grams of protein is about one ribeye. So 100 pounds, you would eat about one ribeye. And then ideally, if you need a little bit more fat added, what we see in our practice is that most people undereat, unfortunately, because you're not as hungry. You don't get the insulin glucose spike, so you're not as hangry. And
Yep.
so a lot of people say, oh, but I'm not hungry. I just ate one ground beef patty and I'm
Mhm.
full and I don't need to eat the rest of the day. But that's why I think a lot of people then start having thyroid problems even on a carnivore diet or keto, because you're under eating and your thyroid is the first one that's going to suffer. So less nice hair, less nice skin, losing your period. These are all symptoms of under eating.
Yes. Yeah, I see that more than I believed back in the day. I mean, you would have never think people are under eating.
Right.
But I think when you go from such lack of nutrient dense food to highly nutrient dense food, your body is just like it's not used to it. And like you said, all the hormones, it's just not your brain isn't accepting this new way of eating. It almost is like in shock, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's because when we eat a lot of the processed carbs, once or like we eat a muffin or a donut or something,
Mhm.
you feel hungry for dinner. But
Mhm.
when you eat this way long term, I could not never eat. And obviously, eventually I'll get hungry. But for the most part, I'm not that hungry when we're waiting for the food and people are like, oh my gosh, the server's taking forever. I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of carnivores feel hangry in that moment, especially
Mhm.
when you're more insulin sensitive. And
Yeah.
so I think that's when we're like, oh, well, I should just eat when I'm hungry, and I'm never really hungry. And I think that's where the risk comes. And
Yeah.
so I think if you have to eat more variety, just think of it as you're eating for healing. This is not eating for enjoyment, eating for
Yes.
healing. And then as you heal, as your symptoms get better, I never track my food. I have no idea how many calories I eat in a day,
Yeah.
but I know that like I feel like I need to eat more. And so some days, even if I'm not hungry, I know sort of I don't think I ate enough protein. And for my
Mhm.
longevity, I will force myself to eat a little more
Me
just so
too.
that I can be healthier.
Me too. I'm like, I don't think that 2 burger patties is gonna cut it today. I better scramble some eggs.
Yeah, and some days, like if there once in a while, if you just eat the burger patties and that's call it a day, that's okay. That's normal human physiology. But if you
Right.
only ate two patties every single day, you're
Yes.
guaranteeing hormone and thyroid imbalances.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people get stuck in this. I have to eat the same thing every day, the same amount every day, and that's
You
not
don't.
normal or
No.
natural. That's not how we evolved as humans to eat. Can you dive a little deeper into that? Because that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest comparative example is sleep. So even if some people sleep 8 hours in one day, they feel great, and some days they sleep eight and they feel horrible. So it's and then some days they could sleep six and they feel just as good as when they sleep eight. So our
Mhm.
needs, depending on what was your movement like the day before, how was your stress level, what did you eat the night before, how close to bed did you eat, like all of these are factors, and even what we're thinking in our minds can impact the level of stress, and that impacts our level of sleep. And so the same things can be affected by the way that you're eating. So if I literally just sat here and worked all day and did nothing else, I barely moved, I maybe had 1,000 steps, which I don't recommend, but let's say I did that, probably the next day I'm not going to be that hungry because for the most part, I didn't move that much.
Mhm.
But again, we have a basal metabolism that our bodies need to even function, to have everything, all the lights on. I think it's about between 12 to 1600. Not saying that should be the lowest you eat, but so it's not like your body's like, okay, every day I need 12 and 16 and then the lights turn off. You're and turn on. Yes, we have a circadian rhythm, but I think the overall is that your body is smart, will try to protect you to live long.
Mhm.
And and so if one day you undereat versus another day you overeat, think of it from a monthly view. In a monthly view, if you eat mostly sufficiently, you should be okay.
And this is where the mood and food journal really helps because you
Yes.
can look back and be like, why am I not hungry today? And you can be like, oh, well, what did I do yesterday? Or what were my steps? If you're keeping up with all the things, even if you just did that for a month, it would help you pay more attention to all the different aspects of like what made me more hungry, what made me less hungry, what made me sleep better, all those things. Yes,
Yes.
very awesome.
No.
Let's see. Allison says Graves' diagnosis over 19 years ago, RAI therapy, and now take uh,
I think it's
DES
less.
replacement, desiccated thyroid
Oh,
replacement.
okay, okay.
If I take glucols, what will happen since my thyroid is non-functioning?
So we have clients that remove their full thyroid, and some that only move partial. Uh, Iodine is not only used in your thyroid, it's also used in other areas. So
Mhm.
there are also nerve endings that will still function. And so I don't think I would go really slow. That would be my recommendation. And I'm not as familiar with the RAI therapy, so I can't speak to that. But what I would do is start with like the half drop, and you could even do every 3 days first to see like how is your body reacting. The food and mood journal will be key for that.
Amazing. All right. What about electrolytes? Do you talk to your clients a lot about electrolytes? Are you kind of like just eat the salt? The salt's the most important. And then if you have any symptoms, then we'll add in mag and potassium. What's your protocol for electrolytes?
So the very first thing I recommend is Soleil water. It's just, the
Mhm.
salt and then like leaving it overnight, letting the minerals sort of unbind from the salt.
Right.
There are many, many trace elements. I think it's like 80 plus that we do need. We do get it mostly from our meats, but just in case if you've been in a long period of depletion, having a little bit of that. Now, not everyone can tolerate it. Again, recommend using it in the morning. Maybe start with like half a teaspoon or half of a teaspoon. And you start with that, see how you feel. Does it give you more energy? Do you feel better? Or is it swelling you? Do you just feel bloat and horrible after? And then you probably don't need that. You could start with the Soleil water because the reason I recommend a little bit excess salt, especially if you're coming from carbs to no carbs, is that your insulin's going to drop, which will then have your kidneys excrete more water. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, your body will retain less water. So you might feel a little bit more fatigue. You might feel a little bit more imbalance. So making sure you're drinking enough water is super key too. I think a lot of carnivores underdrink because we're not eating that sweet, salty, and fat. So you're not
Mhm.
as thirsty as like when you would eat like processed Chinese food. But we need to make sure and still drink because we have to remove like the waste products from protein that supports your kidney to remove that. And so start with Soleil water, or you could just do salt if you prefer just salt. And then if you feel like you're getting like muscle cramps at night, or you feel like a little like your limbs are heavy, you may have to look into starting magnesium and potassium. In general, what I found is that people that are more hypothyroid, so the metabolism's a little slower, you will need magnesium, but maybe in the evenings, and then potassium during the day. So potassium is a little bit more stimulating. I know
Mhm.
people are scared of taking potassium. I would start with maybe just 2 milligrams and start it more in the morning, and then do a little bit of magnesium at night. Once in a while, we have seen people add a little bit of calcium. I know it's so taboo to use it, but so maybe you just start with cheese if you can handle dairy, or maybe even some sardines if you're not intolerant to histamines. But a little bit of calcium can help people sleep through the night too. It's just figuring out what level of minerals that you need, and again, the Food and Mood Journal will help you.
Right. Okay. We're almost out of time. If you could just give one piece of advice, just the most important thing for people to know, what's the one thing you want people to really focus on?
Yeah. I, hmm. So I know. I'm like, should I go faith-based or okay? So I am faith-based. I think having something that you believe in that is bigger than you is so important. I know
Mhm.
that we are like, let me try to control everything. Let me try to fix everything. Let me also lean on these doctors online. And I love Dr. Barry, so we'll exclude him, okay? And you too, Nisha. But I think putting the power back in your own hands, meaning that, okay, I heard from Dr. Barry that, the BBBE diet or the BBBS diet is like ideal for you.
Yeah.
And so then, but let me tweak it however I need to instead
Mhm.
of listening to all the gurus, because no matter who you listen to, you're going to get overwhelmed. If you listen to 5 different people, even if you love them, you're going to say, well, she said she did this and that's how she lost weight. She said she did this and did that. And then it just gets overwhelming. And honestly, that affects your nervous system, which then affects the gut of healing. You're going to release more cortisol, and that whole negativity, it's just forget it. I'll just eat donuts. It's easier, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so if you get an idea of what you should eat and how much, then just use a food and mood journal and use online community for communication and connection, not necessarily for gossip, not necessarily for, did you hear what the new YouTuber said about this? Like instead of that, because that induces stress in you guys, and the stress is going to cause less. The more you're stressed, the less your immune system is on. Just think of it that way. When you're stressed, all the blood flows to your ligaments so you could run. And so the more you are stressed out, even if you're mad, that is releasing cortisol in your system because your body thinks you have to run or fight. And so if you can just calm yourself and you're excited to eat this way, make it more practical. And if you can eat this way, you document a food and mood journal. When something's not working, like write it down. And then maybe if you need to get more care, like look into a practitioner or join a group. But ultimately, use a food and mood journal to power yourself. And then also like have a faith. What is your purpose in life? Like, what is it that you are looking towards healing? And then like, know that sometimes you will never have all the answers, and having some faith in something, and having that hope. I like to lean on prayer because sometimes I want to fix all my patients and we can't. And so I'm like, God, you can do it. I trust you. If I need to find an answer, like I hope you speak to me, and I trust the process instead of like, I'm never going to fix everybody. No one's going to get better. Like, what's the point of recommending meat when the world is ending, right? Like it's such negativity. So I would just recommend eat the meat you enjoy, use a food and mood journal, trust your body, trust your process, have faith, have grace, and then use social media for community and connection, because it is in connection that studies show that you have the most longevity.
That was an amazing answer. I'm sorry. I've got a tickle in my throat.
No, I get that too. Totally get it.
And I almost made it the whole hour without making a scene, but here I am doing it. That was amazing. I love that answer. Judy, tell everybody where they can find you, social media, website, how they can work with you, where they can find your books. Tell us all the details, and I'll have them in the description also after this is over.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. This is fun. I love your hair, by the way. I love it. I gotta like learn tips from you, but okay. So Nutrition with Judy is where you can find me. I'm on most social media platforms, YouTube. I have a podcast as well. And then my first book is Carnivore Cure. And the second book is A Beginner's Guide to Carnivore. I like forget the name too. But yeah, but you can find both books on Amazon under Judy Cho. And we write a lot of articles on carnivore specifically. So, there's a lot of fear mongering that happens with low thyroid and carnivore. And so we show the data of, yes, your T3 and T4 might be a little bit lower, but it might just be the new norm. So I would recommend, just if you are feeling better, just don't get scared by higher cholesterol levels or taking iodine. You can't have both feet in two places. All that's going to do is cause stress on your system. And then eventually that stress level will cause you to eat the ways that are not ideal for your health and longevity.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. Make sure you follow Judy on Instagram. Go check out her books. And thank you so much. We will